The rain fell in torrents across the darkened streets of Portland, turning the asphalt into rivers of reflected neon light. Cassian Blackwood stood atop the abandoned warehouse, his supernatural senses scanning the city below for any sign of danger. At 315 years old, he had learned to read the rhythms of human suffering like a familiar song, and tonight, that song was particularly discordant. His pale fingers gripped the edge of the building's concrete ledge as memories threatened to surface, memories he had spent the last 15 years trying to bury beneath acts of heroism and self-imposed penance. The rain soaked through his dark coat, but he felt nothing. Vampires didn't feel cold, didn't feel much of anything except the eternal hunger and the weight of their sins. Cassian's transformation had been violent and unwilling, the result of an ancient vampire's cruel game. He had been turned during a moment of pure rage and desperation, and in those first horrific hours of his new existence, he had lost all control. The beast within had taken over completely, and when he finally regained consciousness, he shook his head, forcing the memories back into the dark corners of his mind where they belonged. That was the past. This was his present. Standing guard over a city full of innocent people, using his supernatural abilities to protect rather than destroy. It was the only way he could live with what he had become. A scream pierced the night air, sharp and desperate, cutting through the sound of rain like a blade. Cassian's head snapped up, his enhanced hearing pinpointing the source immediately. 3 blocks east, in the warehouse district, where few people ventured after dark. He moved with inhuman speed, leaping from rooftop to rooftop with the fluid grace of a predator. The city blurred past him in streaks of light and shadow, until he reached the source of the disturbance, a narrow alley between 2 abandoned buildings where 3 men had cornered a young woman. "Please," the woman was saying, her voice steady, despite the obvious fear in her posture. "I don't have much money, but you can have whatever I've got." "We don't want your money, sweetheart," one of the men said with a laugh that made Cassian's jaw clench. "We want something else entirely." Cassian dropped silently into the alley behind the attackers, his landing making no sound despite the 30-foot fall. The men were human, their heartbeats rapid with excitement and adrenaline. The woman they had cornered was small and slight, with long auburn hair that caught the streetlight like fire. She couldn't be more than 20, and there was something about her that made Cassian's dead heart skip, a familiarity he couldn't place. "Gentlemen," Cassian said quietly, his voice carrying easily through the narrow space. The 3 men spun around, and Cassian allowed his eyes to glow with supernatural light, his fangs extending just enough to be visible. The effect was immediate and gratifying. All 3 men went pale, their bravado evaporating like mist. "I suggest you find somewhere else to be," Cassian continued, his tone conversational but carrying an undertone of menace that made grown men weep. Immediately. The attackers didn't need to be told twice. They fled the alley with desperate speed, stumbling over each other in their haste to escape the creature that had materialized from their nightmares. Cassian watched them go, then turned his attention to the woman they had been threatening. She was still pressed against the brick wall, but her posture had changed. Instead of fear, she was looking at him with something that might have been curiosity. "Are you all right?" he asked, retracting his fangs and allowing his eyes to return to their normal pale blue. "I'm fine," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Thank you. That was impressive." Most people who witnessed his supernatural abilities either fainted or ran screaming. This woman was doing neither, and that intrigued him more than it should have. "You should be more careful," Cassian said, studying her face in the dim light. "This isn't a safe area, especially at night." "I know," she replied, pushing herself away from the wall. "I work at the shelter 3 blocks from here. I was walking back to my car when they... Well, you saw what happened." A shelter. That explained the lack of fear, perhaps. Someone who worked with the desperate and dangerous would have seen worse things than a vampire with glowing eyes. "I'm Lily," she said, extending her hand with a small smile. "Lily Morrison." "Cassian," he replied, taking her hand briefly. Her skin was warm against his cold flesh, and for a moment he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, a connection to another living being. "Well," "Cassian, I owe you my life," Lily said. "Is there anything I can do to repay you?" "No," Cassian said quickly, perhaps too quickly. "Just be more careful. The world is more dangerous than you know." Lily tilted her head, studying him with eyes that seemed older than her years. "I think I know more about danger than you might expect, but I'll be careful." She started to walk away, then paused and looked back at him. "Will I see you again?" The question caught Cassian off guard. In his 15 years of protecting the innocent, he had never formed personal connections. He saved people and disappeared back into the shadows, a guardian angel they would never see again. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I hope so," Lily said with a smile that made something twist in his chest. "Good people are rare in this world, even the supernatural ones." With that, she walked away, leaving Cassian standing alone in the alley, with the uncomfortable feeling that his carefully ordered existence had just been fundamentally disrupted. Over the following weeks, Cassian found himself drawn to the area around the shelter where Lily worked. He told himself it was simply good patrol territory, a place where vulnerable people gathered and predators might strike. But deep down, he knew he was hoping to see her again. The Morrison house was a refuge for runaway teens and young adults who had nowhere else to go. Cassian watched from the shadows as Lily worked tirelessly to help the lost and forgotten, her compassion evident in every interaction. She had a gift for making people feel seen and valued, for finding hope in the darkest situations. "She's something special, isn't she?" Cassian spun around to find an elderly man standing behind him, apparently having approached without triggering his supernatural senses. The man was in his 70s, with kind eyes and the weathered hands of someone who had worked hard his entire life. "I'm sorry," Cassian said, confused by his failure to detect the man's presence. "Lily," the man said, nodding toward the shelter. "You've been watching her for weeks." "I'm Father Miguel. I run the shelter with her." Cassian felt exposed, caught in behavior that bordered on stalking. "I was just protecting her," Father Miguel said with a knowing smile. "I can sense these things. You're not the first supernatural being to be drawn to her light." The casual mention of his nature should have alarmed Cassian, but something about the priest's demeanor suggested he was safe. "You know what I am. I've been ministering to the supernatural community for 40 years, Father Miguel said. "Vampires, werewolves, witches, they all need guidance sometimes. And you, my son, have the look of someone carrying a great burden." Cassian said nothing, but Father Miguel seemed to understand anyway. "She has that effect on people," the priest continued. "Lily sees the good in everyone, even when they can't see it themselves. It's a rare gift, and sometimes a dangerous one." "Dangerous how?" Father Miguel's expression grew serious. "Because people like her tend to trust too easily, forgive too quickly. She's been hurt before by people who took advantage of her compassion." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of the shelter's front door opening. Lily emerged, her auburn hair catching the streetlight as she looked around. Her gaze found Cassian in the shadows, and she smiled. "I thought I sensed you out here," she said, walking over to them. "Father Miguel, I see you've met my mysterious guardian angel." "Guardian angel?" Father Miguel raised an eyebrow. "He saved me from some attackers a few weeks ago," Lily explained, "and I've noticed him keeping watch over the neighborhood since then. Very dedicated to public safety, our Cassian." Cassian felt heat rise in his cheeks, an impossible sensation for a vampire. But somehow this woman made him feel almost human again. "I should go," he said, uncomfortable with the scrutiny. "Wait," Lily said, reaching out to touch his arm. The contact sent electricity through his dead nerves. "Would you like to come inside? We're serving dinner, and you look like you haven't eaten in." "Well, a while." Cassian almost smiled at that. If only she knew how right she was and how wrong. "I don't eat. Regular food." "Then just come in for the company," Lily said. "Some of our residents have interesting stories. I think you'd find them fascinating." Against his better judgment, Cassian found himself following Lily into the shelter. The interior was warm and welcoming, filled with mismatched furniture and artwork created by the residents. Young people of various ages sat around tables, eating and talking with an ease that spoke of genuine community. "Everyone," Lily called out. "This is Cassian. He's a friend." The introductions were casual and friendly, and Cassian found himself drawn into conversations about art, music, and life on the streets. These young people had seen the worst of humanity, yet they maintained a resilience that amazed him. "You're different from most adults," said a teenager named Marcus, who couldn't have been more than 17. "You actually listen." "Everyone deserves to be heard," Cassian replied, surprised by his own words. "See?" Lily said, appearing at his elbow with a cup of coffee she'd somehow procured. "I told you he was special." As the evening progressed, Cassian found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in decades. The warmth of human connection, the simple pleasure of conversation without ulterior motives, it was intoxicating in a way that had nothing to do with blood. "You're good with them," Lily observed as they watched Marcus show off a painting he'd been working on. "They remind me of myself at that age," Cassian said without thinking. "Lost, angry, looking for somewhere to belong." "And did you find it? Somewhere to belong?" Cassian considered the question. "I found purpose. It's not the same thing, but it's enough." Lily studied his profile with those perceptive eyes. Purpose is important, but everyone needs more than that. Everyone needs connection, love, family. "Some people don't deserve those things," Cassian said quietly. "I don't believe that," Lily said firmly. "I think everyone deserves a second chance, no matter what they've done." Her words hit him like a physical blow, and Cassian had to look away. If only she knew what he had done, what he was capable of. Her faith in universal redemption was beautiful and naive and utterly wrong. "I should go," he said abruptly, standing from the worn couch where they'd been sitting. "Did I say something wrong?" Lily asked, concern evident in her voice. "No," Cassian said, forcing a smile. "It's just late, and you have work to do." Lily walked him to the door, her hand briefly touching his arm again. "Will I see you again?" "I don't know," Cassian said, the same answer he'd given weeks ago. "I hope so," Lily replied, echoing her previous words. "You're welcome here any time, Cassian. This is a place for people who need a second chance." As Cassian walked away from the shelter, her words echoed in his mind. A second chance. If only it were that simple. If only the past could be erased with good intentions and acts of kindness. But some sins were too great for redemption, and some monsters could never be forgiven, no matter how hard they tried to change. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Cassian would patrol the city, protecting the innocent from supernatural threats and human predators alike. And, inevitably, his path would lead him back to the shelter, where Lily worked with tireless dedication to help the lost and forgotten. He told himself he was simply ensuring her safety, that someone with her compassionate nature needed protection in a world full of predators. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was drawn to her light like a moth to flame, even knowing it would ultimately destroy him. "You're falling for her," Father Miguel observed one evening as they watched Lily through the shelter's windows. "That's impossible," Cassian said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Is it? You're here every night watching over her like a lovesick teenager. When was the last time you fed properly?" Cassian realized with a start that the priest was right. He'd been so focused on Lily that he'd neglected his own needs, surviving on animal blood and the occasional blood bag from his contacts at the hospital. It was enough to keep him functional, but barely. "She's human," Cassian said, as if that explained everything. "So? Love doesn't recognize species boundaries. I've seen vampire-human relationships work before." "Not for someone like me," Cassian said darkly. "I'm not. I can't be around innocence like hers. I'll destroy it." Father Miguel studied him with those knowing eyes. "What did you do, son? What sin are you carrying that's so terrible you won't allow yourself happiness?" Cassian was quiet for a long moment, the weight of his secret pressing down on him like a physical force. "I killed innocent people, an entire family. I tore them apart with my bare hands and fed on their blood like an animal. When? 15 years ago, the night I was turned." Father Miguel nodded slowly. "Your first night, you lost control." "That's not an excuse." "It's not an excuse," the priest agreed. "But it's an explanation. Every vampire loses control during their first transformation. It's the nature of the curse. Children died because of me, Cassian said, his voice breaking. Innocent children who never hurt anyone. And you've spent 15 years trying to atone for that, Father Miguel said gently. How many lives have you saved in that time? How many innocents have you protected? It doesn't matter, it doesn't bring them back. No, it doesn't. But it proves that you're not the monster you were that night. You're a man trying to make amends for the worst moment of his existence. Cassian shook his head. Lily believes everyone deserves a second chance. But if she knew what I'd done, she'd probably surprise you, Father Miguel said. That girl has more wisdom and compassion than people twice her age. Don't underestimate her capacity for forgiveness. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of breaking glass from inside the shelter. Both men rushed toward the building as screams erupted from within. Cassian burst through the front door to find chaos. 3 vampires, young ones by the look of them, had invaded the shelter and were terrorizing the residents. One had Marcus pinned against the wall, fangs bared, while another was advancing on a group of terrified teenagers. Get away from them, Cassian snarled, his own supernatural nature erupting to the surface. The attacking vampires turned toward him, their eyes glowing with bloodlust. Well, well, said the one holding Marcus, if it isn't the famous Cassian Blackwood, the vampire who thinks he's a hero. Let them go, Cassian said, moving with predatory grace into the center of the room. Your fight is with me. Actually, said another of the vampires, a woman with platinum blonde hair, our fight is with her. She pointed toward the back of the room, where Lily stood protectively in front of a group of younger residents. Her face was pale but determined, and she held a wooden chair leg like a weapon. She's been asking questions, the blonde vampire continued, digging into things that are none of her business. Our master doesn't appreciate the attention. Cassian felt ice form in his veins. What questions? About a family that died 15 years ago, the vampire said with a cruel smile. The Morrisons. Seems someone's been investigating their deaths very thoroughly. The world seemed to stop. Morrison. Lily Morrison. The family name hit Cassian like a physical blow, and suddenly everything made horrible sense. The familiarity he'd felt when he first saw her. The way she seemed to understand darkness better than someone her age should. The reason she worked so tirelessly to help the lost and forgotten. You see it now, don't you? The vampire said, noting his expression. She's been hunting the monster that killed her family, and she found you. Cassian's gaze snapped to Lily, who was watching him with eyes that held no surprise, only a deep sadness that seemed to encompass years of pain. Is it true? He whispered, though he already knew the answer. Lily nodded slowly. I know who you are, Cassian. I've known since the night you saved me. The attacking vampires laughed at the revelation, but Cassian barely heard them. His world had narrowed to the young woman standing across the room. The baby who had somehow survived his rampage 15 years ago, grown into the compassionate, beautiful person who had been showing him kindness for weeks. I killed your family, he said, the words torn from his throat like shards of glass. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady when she replied, I know, I forgive you. The shelter erupted into chaos as the attacking vampires realized they had stumbled into something far more complex than a simple intimidation mission. The blonde vampire's cruel laughter echoed off the walls as she processed what had just been revealed. Oh, this is rich, she said, her fangs gleaming in the fluorescent light. The great Cassian Blackwood, protector of the innocent, has been playing guardian angel to the sole survivor of his own massacre. How deliciously twisted. Cassian felt as though the ground had opened beneath his feet. 15 years of carefully constructed purpose, of believing he could somehow atone for his sins through acts of heroism, crumbled in an instant. The woman he had been falling for, the light that had begun to heal his damaged soul, was the living reminder of his greatest failure. Lily, he whispered, his voice breaking on her name. We'll discuss this later, she said firmly, her attention focused on the immediate threat. Right now we need to get everyone to safety. Her composure in the face of both supernatural danger and earth-shattering revelation was remarkable. While the shelter's residents cowered in terror, Lily was already moving, herding the younger ones toward the back exit with calm efficiency. I don't think so, the vampire holding Marcus said, tightening his grip on the teenager's throat. "No one leaves until we get what we came for." "Which is?" Cassian asked, though he was already moving into a fighting stance. "The girl's research," the blonde vampire replied. "Every file, every photograph, every piece of evidence she's collected about supernatural activities in this city. Our master is very interested in keeping certain things quiet." Cassian's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of sirens in the distance. Someone had called the police. That would complicate things significantly. Human authorities were ill-equipped to deal with supernatural threats, and their presence would only endanger more innocent lives. "Father Miguel," Cassian called out without taking his eyes off the attacking vampires. "Get everyone out the back, now." "What about you?" the priest asked, already moving to help Lily with the evacuation. "I'll handle this." The vampire holding Marcus laughed. "You'll handle this? There are 3 of us and 1 of you, and you're not exactly at full strength, are you? When was the last time you fed properly, hero?" It was true. Cassian's neglect of his own needs had left him weakened, operating at perhaps 60% of his normal capabilities. Under ordinary circumstances, that would still be enough to handle 3 young vampires. But these weren't ordinary circumstances. His emotional state was in chaos, his concentration shattered by Lily's revelation. "Let the boy go," Cassian said, his voice carrying the supernatural compulsion that older vampires could wield. "Your fight is with me." The vampire holding Marcus wavered for a moment, then shook his head. "Nice try, but our master taught us how to resist compulsion. We're not as green as you think." The blonde vampire began to circle toward the back of the room, clearly intending to cut off the evacuation route. Cassian moved to intercept her, but the third vampire, a thin man with dead eyes, blocked his path. "You know," the thin vampire said conversationally, "our master told us about you, about what you did to that family 15 years ago. He said it was artistic." Rage flared in Cassian's chest, hot and dangerous. "Your master wasn't there." "No, but he saw the aftermath. Said it looked like a pack of wild animals had been let loose in a slaughterhouse. Very thorough work." The vampire's words were calculated to provoke, and they succeeded. Cassian's controls slipped, and he lunged forward with a snarl of fury. The thin vampire was ready for him, producing a silver blade that gleamed with supernatural sharpness. They clashed in the center of the room, moving with inhuman speed. Cassian's superior age and experience showed, but his emotional state and weakened condition made him sloppy. The silver blade sliced across his ribs, sending fire through his nervous system. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of the evacuation continuing. Lily's voice, calm and authoritative, directing people to safety. The knowledge that she was there, that she was the child he had orphaned, made it impossible to focus properly on the fight. "Distracted," the thin vampire taunted, pressing his advantage. "Thinking about how you tore her parents apart? How you drank their blood while their baby cried in the next room?" "Stop," Cassian growled, but the vampire continued. "Did you know she was there? Could you smell her fear while you fed?" Cassian's vision went red. He grabbed the thin vampire by the throat and slammed him into the wall with enough force to crack the concrete. "I said stop!" "Cassian!" Lily's voice cut through his rage like a blade. "Don't!" He turned to see her standing in the doorway to the back room, most of the residents safely evacuated behind her. Her face was pale but determined, and she was looking at him with something that might have been concern. "Don't become the monster they want you to be," she said softly. The words hit him like a physical blow. He released the thin vampire, who crumpled to the floor, gasping. But the moment of distraction cost him. The blonde vampire had circled around and now stood behind Lily, one clawed hand at her throat. "How touching," the blonde said. "The victim protecting her tormentor. Stockholm Syndrome is such a fascinating phenomenon." "Let her go," Cassian said, his voice deadly quiet. "I don't think so. She's our insurance policy now." The vampire's claws pressed against Lily's skin, drawing tiny drops of blood. "You're going to come with us, and she's going to give us everything she's collected about our kind. Or I'll paint these walls with her blood." Cassian felt the familiar weight of impossible choices. Save Lily and condemn himself to whatever fate these vampires had planned, or fight and risk her life. It was the same choice he'd faced 15 years ago when he'd been given the option to submit to transformation or watch innocents die. He'd chosen submission then, and it had led to the massacre that haunted his every waking moment. "Cassian," Lily said quietly, her eyes meeting his across the room. "It's okay. Do what you have to do." The trust in her voice, the complete faith that he would make the right choice, was more than he could bear. This woman who had every reason to hate him, who should have been screaming for his destruction, was telling him it was okay to prioritize his own survival over hers. "I can't," he said, his voice breaking. "I can't lose you too." "You never had me to lose," Lily replied gently. "But you can save me. You can save all of us. That's who you are now." The sirens were getting closer. In minutes, the police would arrive and find a supernatural battle in progress. More innocent lives would be at risk. Cassian made his choice. He moved with every ounce of speed and strength he possessed, crossing the room in a blur of motion. The blonde vampire saw him coming and tried to use Lily as a shield, but Cassian was beyond caring about his own safety. He grabbed the vampire's wrist and twisted, the sound of breaking bones audible throughout the room. The vampire released Lily with a shriek of pain, and Cassian immediately positioned himself between them. The thin vampire and the one who had been holding Marcus recovered quickly, moving to flank him. "3 on 1, the blonde vampire said, cradling her broken wrist. "And you're already wounded. This won't end well for you." "Maybe not," Cassian said, his fangs extending fully. "But it'll end worse for you." The fight that followed was brutal and desperate. Cassian's superior experience was offset by his injuries and emotional state, while the younger vampires had numbers and fresh strength. They moved through the shelter like a hurricane, destroying furniture and leaving cracks in the walls. Cassian managed to stake the thin vampire through the heart with a broken chair leg, but the effort left him open to attack from the other two. Claws raked across his back, and the silver blade found his shoulder, sending agony through his entire body. He was losing. In minutes he would be overwhelmed, and then Lily would be at their mercy. The thought gave him strength he didn't know he possessed. "Enough!" The voice that rang out was not Lily's, but Father Miguel's. The elderly priest stood in the doorway, holding what appeared to be an ornate wooden cross. But this was no ordinary religious symbol. It pulsed with a light that made the attacking vampires recoil in pain. "Blessed silver," Father Miguel said calmly, "consecrated by the Vatican specifically for dealing with your kind. I suggest you leave, now." The remaining vampires looked between the priest and Cassian, calculating their odds. The blonde vampire snarled in frustration. "This isn't over," she said. "Our master won't forget this interference." "Tell your master," Cassian said, struggling to his feet, "that if he wants Lily's research, he'll have to go through me." The vampires exchanged glances, then melted into shadow, disappearing through the windows like smoke. The shelter fell silent, except for the sound of approaching sirens and Cassian's labored breathing. "Are you all right?" Lily asked, moving toward him with obvious concern. "Don't," Cassian said, backing away from her. "Don't come near me. Cassian, I killed your family," he said, the words torn from his throat like shards of glass. "I murdered your parents, your siblings. I orphaned you. How can you even look at me?" Lily stopped, but her expression remained calm and compassionate. "Because I know who you are now. Not who you were 15 years ago, but who you've become. It doesn't matter who I've become. It doesn't change what I did." "No," Lily agreed. "It doesn't change what happened, but it changes what happens next." The police sirens were very close now. Father Miguel moved to the window, keeping watch. "You need to go," he said to Cassian. "The authorities can't find you here like this." Cassian nodded, but he couldn't seem to move. He was trapped in Lily's gaze, in the impossible compassion he saw there. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "When you're ready, when you can hear what I have to say." "There's nothing to say." "There's everything to say," Lily interrupted. 15 years of everything to say. Cassian heard the police cars pulling up outside. He had to leave, had to disappear back into the shadows where he belonged. But first, he needed to know. "How?" he asked. "How did you survive?" Lily's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. "I was in the pantry. My mother hid me there when she heard you coming. I was 18 months old, too young to understand what was happening. I stayed hidden until the neighbors found me the next morning. The image hit Cassian like a physical blow. A terrified toddler hiding in a dark pantry, while he slaughtered her family just feet away. The fact that he had been so lost to bloodlust that he hadn't even sensed her presence made it somehow worse. "I have to go," he said, moving toward the back exit. "Cassian," Lily called after him, "I meant what I said. I forgive you." He paused at the doorway, not turning around. "You shouldn't. Some things are unforgivable." "That's not your choice to make," Lily said firmly. "Forgiveness belongs to the victim, not the perpetrator. And I choose to forgive you." Cassian fled into the night, her words echoing in his mind. But forgiveness, he knew, was not the same as absolution. And some sins were too great to be washed away by even the most generous heart. The next few days passed in a haze of self-recrimination and avoidance. Cassian retreated to his penthouse apartment, a sterile space high above the city that reflected his emotional isolation. He fed properly for the first time in weeks, but the blood tasted like ash in his mouth. He tried to convince himself that leaving was the right choice, that staying away from Lily was the only way to protect her from further harm. But every night, he found himself standing on his balcony, looking toward the part of the city where the shelter stood, wondering if she was safe. The vampires who had attacked the shelter were still out there, along with their mysterious master. Lily was in danger because of her connection to him, because of the research she had conducted into supernatural activities. The responsible thing would be to ensure her protection from a distance, to arrange for other supernatural allies to watch over her. But the thought of never seeing her again, never hearing her voice or witnessing her compassion in action, was almost unbearable. On the third night, Father Miguel appeared at his door. "You look terrible," the priest observed, taking in Cassian's haggard appearance. "I feel worse," Cassian replied, stepping aside to let him enter. The apartment was spartanly furnished, with little to indicate that anyone actually lived there. Father Miguel looked around with obvious disapproval. "This isn't living," he said. "This is existing. It's what I deserve." "According to who? You? Or according to the young woman who's been asking about you every day since you disappeared?" Cassian's head snapped up. "She's been asking about me? She's worried sick. She thinks you're going to do something stupid, like leave the city or worse." Father Miguel settled into one of the few chairs, his weathered hands folded in his lap. "She wants to see you. That's not a good idea. Why? Because you're afraid of what she might say? Or because you're afraid of what you might feel?" Cassian moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. "She forgives me. She actually forgives me for destroying her life. And that terrifies you. It should terrify anyone with a functioning conscience. Forgiveness like that. It's not natural, it's not human." Father Miguel was quiet for a moment. "Tell me about that night, about what really happened." Cassian closed his eyes, the memories rushing back with painful clarity. "I was 28. I'd been working as a doctor in a rural clinic, trying to help people who couldn't afford proper medical care. There was a vampire, ancient, powerful. He'd been feeding in the area, and I was getting close to exposing him. So, he turned you. He gave me a choice: submit to transformation, or watch him slaughter every patient in my clinic. 23 people, including children." Cassian's voice was barely above a whisper. "I chose transformation, to save innocent lives. And in doing so, I became the monster I was trying to stop. The transformation. I lost all control. I was consumed by hunger, by rage, by the need to feed. When I came back to myself, I was standing in a farmhouse covered in blood. The Morrison family." Cassian nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "Parents, 2 older children, and what I thought was a baby. I had torn them apart like an animal, fed on them until there was nothing left. But you didn't know about Lily. I should have sensed her, should have known there was another heartbeat in the house. But I was so lost to the bloodlust that I missed her completely." Cassian turned from the window, his face etched with pain. "She was 18 months old, Father, a baby who watched her family die because of me. A baby who survived because her mother was smart enough to hide her, Father Miguel corrected gently. A baby who grew up to become a woman of extraordinary compassion and strength. A woman who should hate me, but doesn't. And that's what you can't accept, isn't it? That someone could know the worst thing about you and still choose to see the good. Cassian sank into a chair, suddenly feeling every one of his 315 years. How can she forgive something like that? How can anyone? I don't know, Father Miguel admitted. But I know that forgiveness is a gift, not just to the forgiven, but to the forgiver. It frees both parties from the chains of the past. Some chains are meant to be permanent. Are they? Or do we just tell ourselves that because it's easier than accepting grace? Before Cassian could respond, his enhanced hearing picked up the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside his apartment. Light, careful steps that he recognized immediately. She's here, he said, his voice tight with panic. Father Miguel smiled. I may have mentioned where you lived. You had no right. I had every right. As a priest, as someone who cares about both of you, and as someone who's tired of watching two good people torture themselves over something that happened 15 years ago. A soft knock echoed through the apartment. Cassian stared at the door as if it were a portal to another dimension. Answer it, Father Miguel said gently. It's time. Cassian stood frozen before the door, his enhanced hearing picking up the steady rhythm of Lily's heartbeat on the other side. Each beat seemed to echo the weight of 15 years, the space between the monster he had been and the man he was trying to become. Cassian. Lily's voice was soft, uncertain. I know you're in there. Please, just let me talk to you. Father Miguel rose from his chair, moving toward the door. If you won't open it, I will. Don't, Cassian said, but there was no real force behind the word. She's been carrying this burden just as long as you have, the priest said gently. Don't you think she deserves the chance to speak her piece? Cassian closed his eyes, steeling himself for what was to come. With movements that felt like they belonged to someone else, he crossed the apartment and opened the door. Lily stood in the hallway, looking smaller than he remembered. She wore a simple blue dress and carried a worn leather satchel that seemed heavy with more than just physical weight. Her auburn hair caught the light from the hallway fixtures, and her eyes, those same eyes that had looked at him with such trust and compassion, were red-rimmed with exhaustion. Hello, Cassian, she said quietly. You shouldn't be here, he replied, though he made no move to close the door. Probably not, she agreed, but I needed to see you to make sure you were all right. All right? Cassian laughed bitterly. I'm a monster who killed your family. How could I possibly be all right? Lily studied his face with those perceptive eyes. You look like you haven't slept in days, or fed properly. The observation was accurate, and somehow made everything worse. Here was the woman he had orphaned, worried about his well-being. May I come in? She asked. What I have to say. It's not really hallway conversation. Cassian stepped aside reluctantly, and Lily entered the apartment. She looked around at the sterile space with obvious sadness. This is how you live? She asked. It's what I deserve. No, Lily said firmly, setting her satchel on the coffee table. This is what you think you deserve. There's a difference. Father Miguel cleared his throat. I think I'll leave you two to talk. Lily, call me when you're ready to go home. I can take care of myself, Father, Lily said with a small smile. I know you can, but humor an old man. After the priest left, silence settled over the apartment like a heavy blanket. Cassian remained by the door, as if ready to flee at any moment, while Lily moved to the window that overlooked the city. Beautiful view, she said. It keeps me separate from them, Cassian replied, from the people I might hurt. Is that what you think, that you're still dangerous? I know I am. The hunger never goes away, Lily. The potential for violence is always there, just beneath the surface. Lily turned from the window, her expression thoughtful. Do you know what I do for a living, besides the shelter work? The change of subject caught him off guard. No. I'm a trauma counselor. I work with people who've experienced terrible things, abuse, violence, loss. I help them find ways to heal, to move forward. She moved to the satchel and began removing items, and in my spare time, I research supernatural crimes, specifically Vampire attacks. Cassian felt ice form in his veins as she laid out photographs, newspaper clippings, and official reports on the coffee table. He recognized some of them, crime scenes he had investigated over the years, trying to track down rogue vampires. "I've been documenting supernatural activity in this region for 8 years," Lily continued, "ever since I turned 18 and gained access to the police files about my family's death." "Why?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "Because I needed to understand. I needed to know if the thing that killed my family was still out there, still hurting people." She picked up a photograph, a crime scene that looked disturbingly similar to what Cassian remembered of the Morrison farmhouse. This was the Hendricks family, killed 6 years ago. Same MO, same level of violence. Cassian stared at the photograph, his enhanced memory immediately cataloguing the differences. "That wasn't me." "I know," Lily said, "because 6 years ago you were in Seattle, stopping a vampire from massacring a homeless encampment. I have the newspaper article." She produced another set of documents, these showing Cassian's heroic interventions over the years, dozens of them, spanning more than a decade. "The Hendricks family was killed by a vampire named Victor Dracul," Lily continued. "He's been active for over 2 centuries, leaving a trail of bodies across 3 continents. He's the one who turned you, isn't he?" Cassian sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the scope of her research. "How did you—" "I'm very good at my job," Lily said simply, "and I had a very personal motivation to be thorough." She sat across from him, her hands folded in her lap. "I know about the clinic where you worked, about the choice Victor gave you, about the 23 people you saved by accepting transformation. I still killed your family." "Yes," Lily said, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. "You did. But you weren't yourself. You were a newly turned vampire, consumed by bloodlust and driven by instincts you couldn't control. Victor made sure of that." "It doesn't excuse anything," Lily agreed, "but it explains it. And explanation isn't the same as justification, but it's a start toward understanding." Cassian looked at the evidence spread across his coffee table, years of meticulous research, of tracking both his crimes and his redemptive acts. Why? Why go to all this trouble? Lily was quiet for a moment, her gaze distant. "Because I needed to know who killed my family, and I needed to know if that person was still a threat. And the person who killed my family died that same night," Lily said softly. "He died when you regained control and realized what you had done. The man sitting across from me now is someone else entirely." Cassian shook his head. "I'm the same person." "Are you?" "The vampire who killed my family was driven by hunger and rage and Victor's manipulation. The man I've been watching for the past 8 years is driven by guilt and a desperate need to protect innocent people. Those aren't the same person, Cassian." She reached into her satchel and pulled out a thick folder. "Do you know how many lives you've saved in the past 15 years? I do. I've documented every single one." The folder contained hundreds of documents, police reports, newspaper articles, witness statements, all of them detailing Cassian's interventions, his protection of the innocent, his relentless pursuit of supernatural predators. 347 people, Lily said. "That's how many lives you've directly saved. And that doesn't count the indirect effects, the vampires you've stopped who would have killed dozens more, the supernatural threats you've eliminated before they could cause harm." Cassian stared at the documents, his vision blurring. "It doesn't bring back your family." "No," Lily said, tears beginning to flow down her cheeks. "It doesn't. Nothing will ever bring them back. But it means their deaths weren't meaningless. It means something good came from something terrible. How can you say that? How can you sit there and tell me their deaths had meaning?" Lily wiped her eyes, her voice growing stronger. "Because if you hadn't been turned, if you hadn't experienced that loss of control, you wouldn't have dedicated your life to preventing others from experiencing the same thing. You wouldn't have saved those 347 people. That's a horrible calculus. Yes, it is, but it's also the reality we live with. Terrible things happen, and we can either let them destroy us or we can find ways to create meaning from the pain." Cassian looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since she'd entered his apartment. She was crying, but her posture was strong, her voice steady. This was a woman who had stared into the abyss of her own trauma and chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage. "I don't understand how you can forgive me," he said quietly. "Because forgiveness isn't about you," Lily replied. "It's about me. It's about choosing to let go of the anger and hatred that would otherwise consume my life. But I killed your parents, your siblings. I destroyed your family. Yes, you did. And for years I hated you for it. I fantasized about finding you, about making you pay for what you'd done." She gestured to the research spread across the table. "This started as a quest for revenge." "What changed?" Lily smiled through her tears. "I found you. Not the monster from my nightmares, but the man you'd become. I watched you save people, protect the innocent, dedicate your entire existence to making amends for one terrible night. And I realized that hating you was only hurting me. So you decided to forgive me. I decided to try. It took time. Years of therapy, of working through my trauma, of learning to separate the person you were that night from the person you became afterward." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Forgiveness isn't a feeling, Cassian. It's a choice. And it's one I make every day." Cassian felt something breaking apart inside his chest, a wall he'd built around his heart 15 years ago, constructed from guilt and self-hatred and the belief that he was irredeemable. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he whispered. "That's not your decision to make," Lily said firmly. "Forgiveness belongs to the victim, not the perpetrator. And I choose to forgive you." They sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of 15 years of pain and guilt and gradual healing settling between them. Finally, Cassian spoke. "What happens now?" Lily reached into her satchel one more time, pulling out a manila envelope. "Now, we deal with the immediate problem. Victor Dracul is in the city." Cassian's head snapped up. "What?" "The vampires who attacked the shelter work for him. He's been tracking my research, trying to eliminate anyone who might expose his activities." She handed him the envelope. "He knows I've found you, and he knows you've been interfering with his operations for years." Cassian opened the envelope to find photographs of Victor, recent ones taken in Portland. The vampire looked exactly as he had 15 years ago, ageless and predatory. "He's planning something big," Lily continued. "My sources in the supernatural community say he's been gathering followers, building an army. The attack on the shelter was just a warning." "Sources in the supernatural community?" Lily smiled. "You're not the only supernatural being who's dedicated their life to protecting innocence. I've been building a network for years. Vampires, werewolves, witches all working together to stop predators like Victor." Cassian stared at her in amazement. "You've been building a supernatural protection network?" "Someone had to. The official authorities are useless against supernatural threats, and most supernatural beings are too focused on their own survival to worry about protecting humans." She gestured to the research on the table. "I may be human, but I understand the supernatural world better than most of its inhabitants." "And Victor knows about this network?" "He knows enough to consider me a threat. That's why he sent those vampires to the shelter. He wanted to eliminate me and destroy my research." Cassian felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "I'll stop him. I'll make sure he can't hurt you or anyone else." "We'll stop him," Lily corrected. "Together." "No, absolutely not. I won't put you in danger." "I'm already in danger," Lily interrupted. "And I'm not some helpless victim who needs protection. I've been hunting supernatural predators for 8 years. I know what I'm doing. You're human. You're vulnerable. So are the people Victor will kill if we don't stop him." Lily's voice was firm, brooking no argument. "I didn't spend 8 years building a network and researching supernatural crimes just to step aside when things get dangerous." Cassian looked at her, this remarkable woman who had survived his worst moment and grown into someone stronger and more compassionate than he could have imagined. The idea of putting her in danger made him feel physically ill, but he could see the determination in her eyes. "If we do this," he said slowly, "we do it my way. You follow my lead. You stay behind me in any confrontation. And if I tell you to run, you run." "Agreed," Lily said, with one condition, which is, you stop treating yourself like a monster who doesn't deserve happiness. You accept that you've earned the right to redemption through 15 years of selfless service. Cassian was quiet for a long moment. I don't know if I can do that. Then start small, Lily said gently. Start by accepting that I forgive you. Really forgive you, not just say the words, but believe them. And if I can't? Lily stood and moved to where he sat, kneeling beside his chair. She took his cold hands in her warm ones, and the contact sent electricity through his dead nerves. Then I'll keep reminding you until you can, she said, because that's what people who care about each other do. They help each other heal. Cassian looked into her eyes, those same eyes that had haunted his nightmares for 15 years, but which now held only compassion and understanding. Slowly, carefully, as if she might disappear at any moment, he lifted one hand to touch her cheek. I don't understand how you can be real, he whispered. I'm real, Lily said, leaning into his touch. And so is this. So is the possibility of something good coming from something terrible. For the first time in 15 years, Cassian allowed himself to hope that redemption might be possible, not because he deserved it, but because this remarkable woman had chosen to offer it freely. There's something else, Lily said, her voice growing serious. Something I haven't told you yet. Cassian felt his newfound hope waver. What? Lily was quiet for a moment, as if gathering courage. I'm sick, Cassian. I have a rare genetic condition, the same one that killed my biological grandmother. The doctors say I have maybe 6 months, possibly less. The words hit him like a physical blow. What? It's why I've been so focused on my research, why I've been working so hard to build the network. I wanted to accomplish something meaningful with the time I had left. Cassian felt the world tilting around him, to find her, to receive her forgiveness, only to lose her again. It was a cruelty beyond anything he could have imagined. There has to be something, medical treatment, experimental procedures. I've explored every option, Lily said gently. This isn't something that can be cured with human medicine. Then we'll find another way. Supernatural healing, magic. Cassian, Lily interrupted softly, her hand covering his. There is another way, but it's not something I can ask of you. Understanding dawned slowly, and with it a new kind of horror. No, absolutely not. Transformation, Lily said quietly. It's the only thing that could save me. The vampire virus would override the genetic condition, give me immortality instead of death. Cassian pulled away from her as if she'd burned him. I won't do that to you. I won't make you into what I am. What you are is someone who's saved hundreds of lives. What I am is a killer, a monster who feeds on blood and lives in darkness. Cassian stood abruptly, pacing to the window. I won't curse you with this existence. It wouldn't be a curse if we were together. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Cassian turned to stare at her, seeing the truth in her eyes. You're not just asking me to save your life, he said slowly. You're asking me to spend eternity with you. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that love can transform even the darkest existence into something beautiful, Lily replied. I'm asking you to believe that we could build something good together. Love. The word came out as barely a whisper. Lily stood and moved toward him, her movements careful and deliberate. I love you, Cassian. Not despite what you've done, but because of who you've become. I love your dedication to protecting innocence, your willingness to sacrifice everything for others, your capacity for remorse and growth. You can't love me. I killed your family. And then you spent 15 years making sure no other families would suffer the same fate, Lily said firmly. You think your past defines you, but I see your present. I see your future, and I want to be part of it. Cassian felt tears he didn't know he could still shed burning his eyes. If I transform you, there's no going back. You'll be bound to darkness, to hunger, to an existence that's fundamentally unnatural. I'll be bound to you, Lily corrected, and that's enough. What if the transformation changes you? What if you become something different, something that can't forgive? Then we'll face that together. But Cassian, I'm dying. In 6 months, maybe less, This conversation won't matter because I'll be gone. The choice isn't between human life and vampire existence. It's between vampire existence and death. The brutal logic of her words cut through his emotional turmoil. She was right. The genetic condition would kill her regardless of his decision. The only question was whether he could bring himself to offer her the alternative. "I need time to think," he said finally. "We don't have much time. Victor is planning something, and my condition is progressing faster than the doctors expected." "How much time?" Lily's smile was sad but determined. "Weeks, maybe a month, which means we need to stop Victor first, before we can worry about anything else." The next few days passed in a blur of preparation and planning. Lily's supernatural network proved to be even more extensive than Cassian had imagined. Vampires who had chosen to protect rather than prey, werewolves who served as guardians of their territories, witches who used their power to heal rather than harm. They gathered in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a diverse group united by their commitment to protecting innocent lives. Cassian found himself impressed by the organization Lily had built, the way she commanded respect from beings who were centuries older and infinitely more powerful than she was. "Victor has been gathering followers for months," reported Marcus, a vampire who looked barely 20 but claimed to be over a century old. Young ones, mostly, newly turned vampires who are easy to manipulate. "How many?" Cassian asked. "At least 30, possibly more. He's promising them unlimited feeding, no restrictions, no consequences." "And his plan." A werewolf named Sarah stepped forward, her expression grim. "Mass transformation. He wants to turn as many humans as possible in a single night, create chaos that will expose our existence to the world." "Why?" Lily asked. "What does he gain from exposure?" "War," Cassian said, understanding dawning. "He wants a war between humans and supernatural beings. In the chaos, he could position himself as a leader, build an empire on the ruins of both societies." "The transformation event is planned for tomorrow night," Marcus continued, "during the Harvest Festival downtown. Thousands of people will be gathered in a confined space." Cassian felt ice form in his veins. A mass transformation event would be a massacre beyond anything he could imagine. Newly turned vampires were unpredictable and violent. 30 of them unleashed on a crowd of innocent people would result in hundreds of deaths. "We have to stop him," Lily said, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of the threat. "We will," Cassian replied, "but not you. You're staying here where it's safe." "Like hell I am." "Lily, no arguments. This is my network, my responsibility. I'm not sitting on the sidelines while other people fight my battles." The determination in her voice reminded Cassian of why he'd fallen in love with her in the first place. She was fearless in the face of danger, committed to protecting others, even at the cost of her own safety. "If you're coming," he said finally, "you stay with me. No heroics, no unnecessary risks." Agreed. As the group dispersed to make final preparations, Cassian found himself alone with Lily in the warehouse. The weight of everything unsaid hung between them like a physical presence. "After tomorrow," Lily said quietly, "assuming we survive, you'll give me an answer." "Lily, I know what I'm asking of you. I know the weight of that decision. But I need to know that there's a possibility, that you're at least considering it." Cassian looked at her, this remarkable woman who had forgiven the unforgivable, who had built something beautiful from the ashes of tragedy, who was asking him to save her life in the only way possible. "I'm considering it," he said finally. "That's all I can ask for." The Harvest Festival was in full swing when they arrived downtown the next evening. Thousands of people filled the streets, families with children, couples on dates, groups of friends celebrating the season. The sight of so many innocent people enjoying themselves, unaware of the danger approaching, made Cassian's protective instincts flare. "Victor will wait until the crowd is at its densest," he told the assembled team through their communication devices. "Probably around midnight when the main stage performance begins." They had positioned themselves throughout the festival area, vampires on the rooftops, werewolves patrolling the perimeter, witches maintaining protective wards. Lily stayed close to Cassian, her hand resting on the silver-blessed weapons Father Miguel had provided. "There," Lily said, pointing toward the main stage. "Victor." Cassian followed her gaze and felt his blood turn to ice. Victor Dracul stood near the stage, surrounded by his followers. He looked exactly as he had 15 years ago, ageless, predatory, radiating an aura of barely contained violence. "He's starting the ritual," Marcus reported through the comm. "I can see the magical preparations." "All teams, move in," Cassian ordered. "Remember, the priority is protecting the civilians. Don't let any of Victor's followers reach the crowd." The battle that followed was unlike anything Cassian had experienced in his long existence. Victor's followers were young and vicious, driven by bloodlust and the promise of unlimited feeding. They fought with the desperate fury of the newly damned, caring nothing for their own survival. Cassian moved through the chaos like an avenging angel, his centuries of experience and supernatural strength allowing him to cut through Victor's forces with deadly efficiency. But there were too many of them, and they were too spread out. For every vampire he destroyed, 2 more seemed to appear. "Cassian," Lily's voice cut through the noise of battle. "The ritual. He's completing it." Cassian looked toward the stage to see Victor standing in the center of a complex magical circle, his arms raised toward the sky. Dark energy was gathering around him, preparing to wash over the crowd and transform every human it touched. "I have to stop him," Cassian said into his comm. "You can't reach him in time," Sarah replied. "There are too many followers between you and the stage." Cassian looked around desperately, calculating distances and obstacles. She was right. By the time he fought through Victor's remaining forces, the ritual would be complete. "I can reach him," Lily said quietly. "No, I'm human. His followers won't see me as a threat until it's too late." She was already moving, slipping through the crowd with practiced ease. "Lily, stop." But she was gone, disappearing into the mass of people like a ghost. Cassian tried to follow, but a group of Victor's vampires blocked his path, forcing him into combat. He fought with desperate fury, destroying his opponents with ruthless efficiency. But by the time he broke free, Lily was already on the stage, standing behind Victor, as he completed his ritual. "Victor," she called out. The ancient vampire turned, his eyes widening in surprise as he recognized her. "The little researcher. How delightful that you could join us for the grand finale." "It's over," Lily said, her voice carrying clearly over the noise of the festival. "Your followers are defeated, your plan has failed." Victor laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "My dear child, you're too late. The ritual is complete. In moments, every human in this crowd will be transformed into a vampire. Chaos will reign, and from that chaos, I will build a new world order." "No," Lily said, pulling something from her jacket. "You won't." Cassian's enhanced vision picked up the object in her hand, a small vial filled with a glowing liquid. He recognized it immediately as one of Father Miguel's holy water preparations, blessed and consecrated specifically for destroying vampires. "One vial won't stop the ritual," Victor said dismissively. "This isn't holy water," Lily replied. "It's something much more dangerous to you." She threw the vial at the center of Victor's ritual circle. When it shattered, the liquid spread across the magical symbols, and the dark energy that had been building suddenly reversed, flowing back toward Victor instead of out toward the crowd. "Impossible," Victor snarled. "What was in that vial?" "My blood," Lily said simply. "Blood freely given by someone who forgives even the unforgivable. It's the one thing your dark magic can't overcome." The reversed energy struck Victor like a physical blow, sending him staggering. The ritual circle began to collapse, its dark power turning back on itself. "You little—" Victor lunged toward Lily with inhuman speed. Cassian arrived at the same moment, intercepting Victor's attack. The 2 vampires crashed into the stage equipment, sending sparks flying. They fought with the fury of ancient enemies, their supernatural strength destroying everything around them. "You should have stayed hidden," Victor snarled as they grappled. "You should have accepted what you are and embraced the darkness." "I know what I am," Cassian replied, driving a wooden stake toward Victor's heart. "I'm someone who protects innocence from monsters like you." Victor deflected the stake, but the effort left him open to Cassian's follow-up attack. They rolled across the stage, each seeking the advantage that would end the fight. "Even if you destroy me," Victor said, "it won't change what you did. It won't bring back her family." "No," Cassian agreed, finally pinning Victor to the stage floor. "But it will prevent you from destroying any more families." He drove the stake through Victor's heart with all the strength he possessed. The ancient vampire's eyes widened in shock, then slowly dimmed as his body crumbled to dust. The sudden silence that followed was deafening. The ritual circle had completely collapsed, its dark energy dissipated harmlessly into the night. The festival crowd, unaware of how close they had come to disaster, continued their celebrations. "Is it over?" Lily asked, moving to Cassian's side. "It's over," he confirmed, pulling her into his arms. "You were incredible. That trick with your blood. How did you know it would work?" "I didn't," Lily admitted. "But Father Miguel mentioned that freely given forgiveness has power over dark magic. I figured it was worth a try." Cassian held her close, feeling the warmth of her body against his cold flesh. She had risked everything to save thousands of innocent lives, had faced down an ancient vampire with nothing but courage and faith. "I have my answer," he said quietly. Lily pulled back to look at him. "What?" "You asked me to consider transforming you. I have my answer." "And?" Cassian cupped her face in his hands, looking into those eyes that had shown him forgiveness when he deserved only condemnation. "Yes, if you're certain it's what you want, if you understand what you're asking for, then yes." Tears filled Lily's eyes. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure that I love you. I'm sure that losing you would destroy me. And I'm sure that whatever existence we build together will be better than any existence I could have alone. Even if I become something different, even if the transformation changes me." "Then we'll face that together," Cassian said, echoing her earlier words. "But I don't think you'll change. I think you'll just become a more powerful version of who you already are." Lily smiled through her tears. "When?" "Soon, before your condition progresses any further." Cassian hesitated. "But first, there's something I need to do." "What?" "I need to visit their graves. Your family's graves. I need to say goodbye to the man I was and ask their forgiveness for what I'm about to do." Lily nodded, understanding immediately. "I'll come with you." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. They were my family, and you're going to be my eternal companion. They should meet you properly." Epilogue. 3 months later, the cemetery was quiet in the pre-dawn darkness, the only sound the whisper of wind through the ancient oak trees. Cassian and Lily walked hand in hand between the weathered headstones, their footsteps silent on the frost-covered grass. The Morrison family plot was in the older section of the cemetery, marked by a simple granite monument that bore the names of Lily's parents and siblings. Fresh flowers lay at the base of the stone, lilies that Lily brought every week, a tradition she had maintained for years. "Hello, Mom, Dad, Sarah, Michael," Lily said softly, kneeling beside the graves. "I brought someone to meet you." Cassian stood behind her, his hands clasped in front of him like a penitent. The weight of 15 years pressed down on his shoulders, but it felt different now, not the crushing burden of unforgivable sin, but the solemn responsibility of remembrance. "This is Cassian," Lily continued. Well, it's complicated. But I love him, and I think you would too, if you could meet him now." "I'm sorry," Cassian said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry for what I took from you, from her. I'm sorry for the pain I caused, the lives I ended, the future I stole." The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment Cassian could almost imagine he heard voices in the sound. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps understanding. "I can't undo what I did," he continued, "but I can promise you that I'll spend eternity protecting her, loving her, making sure she never experiences that kind of loss again." Lily stood and took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "They know," she said softly. "They understand." "How can you be sure?" "Because they raised me to believe in forgiveness, in second chances, in the power of love to transform even the darkest situations." Lily smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. They would want me to be happy. And you make me happy. Cassian looked down at her, this remarkable woman who had forgiven the unforgivable, who had chosen love over hatred, hope over despair. In 3 days, when the moon was dark, he would transform her. She would become like him, immortal and powerful, bound to darkness but no longer bound by the limitations of human mortality. "Are you ready?" he asked. "I've been ready since the night you saved me from those attackers," Lily replied. "I just didn't know it yet." They stood together in the quiet cemetery, two souls who had found each other across an impossible divide. The past could not be changed, the dead could not be brought back, but the future stretched before them like an unwritten book. "What will we do?" Lily asked. "After the transformation, I mean. What kind of life will we build?" "We'll continue the work," Cassian said. "Protecting innocence, stopping supernatural predators, building the network you started, but we'll do it together." "Forever?" "Forever." As the first hints of dawn began to touch the horizon, they made their way back through the cemetery. Cassian would need to seek shelter soon. The sun was still deadly to him, though after the transformation, Lily would be strong enough to walk in daylight. "Do you think they really forgive me?" Cassian asked as they reached the cemetery gates. Lily stopped and turned to face him, her hands framing his face with infinite tenderness. "I think forgiveness isn't something you earn or deserve. I think it's something you accept, something you allow to transform you. And if I can't accept it, then I'll keep offering it until you can," Lily said, echoing words she'd spoken months ago. "Because that's what love does. It keeps offering grace until grace becomes real." Cassian leaned down to kiss her, tasting the salt of tears he didn't remember shedding. In 3 days, everything would change. She would become immortal, powerful, bound to him for eternity. It was a tremendous responsibility, a choice that would echo through centuries. But as he held her in the growing light of dawn, Cassian felt something he hadn't experienced in 15 years. Peace. Not the absence of guilt, but the presence of hope. Not the erasure of the past, but the promise of a future built on love and forgiveness, and the radical belief that even monsters could be redeemed. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I love you too," Lily replied. "All of you, past, present, and future." As they walked away from the cemetery together, the sun rose over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. It was a new day, the beginning of a new chapter in a story that had started with tragedy, but would continue with hope. Behind them, the Morrison family graves stood silent in the morning light, their flowers bright against the weathered stone. And if the wind that rustled through the oak trees carried a whisper of blessing, of parents who had raised a daughter wise enough to choose love over hatred, neither Cassian nor Lily heard it. But perhaps in the end, that didn't matter. Perhaps what mattered was the choice itself, the decision to forgive, to love, to build something beautiful from the ashes of something terrible. Perhaps that was enough. What an incredible journey of forgiveness and redemption. From that devastating confession to the beautiful choice of eternal love, Cassian and Lily's story proves that even the darkest past can be transformed by the power of forgiveness and genuine love. The way Lily chose to see who Cassian had become, rather than who he was in his worst moment, absolutely destroyed me emotionally. I have to ask, do you think you could have made the same choice as Lily? Could you forgive someone who had caused you such profound loss, especially if you saw how they had dedicated their life to making amends? And what about Cassian's final decision to transform her? Was that an act of love or selfishness? If this story of impossible forgiveness and love conquering even the darkest sins moved you, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Your support helps me bring you more emotionally powerful stories that explore the depths of human and supernatural nature. Drop a comment below and tell me, which moment hit you hardest? Lily's revelation that she knew the truth all along, Cassian's confession, or that final scene at her family's graves? And do you believe that anyone can truly be redeemed no matter what they've done? Next week, I'm bringing you another heart-wrenching supernatural romance. The angel who fell for her was the same one who killed her in her past life. Get ready for another emotional roller coaster that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about love, fate, and second chances. Until then, remember that forgiveness is always a choice, And love really can transform even the darkest souls.